move on, Keith, and we can talk about Chelsea, because they're reportedly paying Graham Potter £100,000 a week in wages. There was some discussion that is still going on. What are your thoughts on that and the crazy reaction on social media to that news?
Well, it's actually quite normal. I think it may even be up to £200,000 a week. But either when a manager and the club decide that they're going to part ways, there are two ways. Either they pay a lump sum or they carry on paying the contract out as it is. It could well be a cash flow issue for Chelsea. I'm sure Potter has no desire or a need for a lump sum straight away. So for him, it may well suit his needs, whether it's tax-wise or whatever, to carry on like that. I'm sure his consultants will look at it, but it's normally quite normal to have this sort of arrangement, that a contract is honoured until it expires.
And then keep sort of delving into that a bit more then. How often does that happen? You know, do it again. Keith, from a fan's point of view, I'm sure that probably happens more often than you've kind of suggested in there. Do you think that that's because of the relationship Potter had with the board, or is that simply something that sort of goes across football?
No, I think it'll be an analysis from his own agents or his experts, and they'll have thought this is the right thing to do in terms of, as I say, could be tax reasons, so spreading it over a number of years, or it could be Chelsea have offered that as well for a reason. It's just probably going to be from the best financial point of view for both parties. I don't think it's anything to do with relationships. I tend to prefer, when I've had in this situation, I tend to prefer actually paying the lump sum and cutting ties completely. I think that is often the best thing to actually, put a full stop underneath the relationship and move on. But certainly I have been in the case where we've carried on paying contracts, and either way can work. As I say, it really depends on the numbers and the view on both parties, but it doesn't mean anything other than it's just a financial transaction.
There's some news talking about talking about transfer rumours that they're looking to bring back Dom Solanke to the club, but that his release clause of about £65 million might be too steep potentially for Enzo Maresca. What do you make of that news and his potential return to Stamford Bridge?
I don't see that happening at all. Certainly not in those sort of numbers. Look, while he's shown promise and some form for Bournemouth, I think that's where he should stay. Solanke, I don't think he will be really a Chelsea-type player. I don't think he's the solution they're looking for. I think he's a bit like what they already have. So, no, I don't think that one's going to be a goer.
There's some news as well that Romelu Lukaku could be heading to Napoli, linking up with Antonio Conte again. Is that a suitable move for parties all round? And what have you made of his time at Chelsea?
Well, I think they probably wish they'd kept him right at the start when they had him as a youth player and carried on through there. Look, I've watched him closely at Everton. He did great things at Everton. He did very well there, and that's probably what made his reputation, was that particular spell. Look, I think the Napoli move is good for him. I think that's who he's going to respond to. He seems to have, or seems to be, a striker that does need the mental side to be right to get things going. Physically, he's very imposing. I don't know how his fitness is these days, but if he is very fit and his speed is as good as it can be, he can be unplayable at certain times, and he can certainly do well in Serie A. So I think if his fitness is right, then I think Mourinho will certainly get the best out of him, and he could be one to watch this season.
It looks like as well, Keith, Malang Sarr has been released by the club. He only played 21 games for Chelsea over his few years at the club. I mean, although he joined as a free agent and he's offered £100,000 a week in wages, do you think that this sort of method that Chelsea have gone down about signing lots of players, like we've discussed, actually is proving to have not worked?
No, I think it has worked. I think if we look at the numbers, I mean, Alec Ferguson used to say, when I spoke to him about this sort of thing, he would say that he would think he was great if he got 50-50 of his transfer decisions correct. I couldn't believe that 50-50 is an acceptable ratio. As a chief executive, I wanted my manager or sporting director to be 80 to 90% correct. Now, Chelsea, I don't know what their ratio of success is on their academy players, but I think it's pretty high, and I think it's above 50-50. So, yes, Malang Sarr may be one that hasn't worked. I don't know the reasons behind it, whether there are medical issues or whether there's mental issues. I've no idea. But certainly he hasn't worked. But I think they can show that on average, they've had great success from their academy. So I think they can be justified in taking the punts they have done. and they seem to always make some decent money from those sales. So they've done all right.
Trevor Chalobah, Keith, he hasn't joined their pre-season tour, and fans at the club are actually arguing he's their best centre-backs. There's been lots of, discussion on social media about that. It sounds like they're willing to sell as well. Do you think that could be a huge mistake? I know you've just hinted there that actually they've done quite well from a transfer, or from an incomings point of view, but from an outgoings perspective, what do you make of that potential deal?
Well, I'm also surprised. I mean, I rate Chalobah very highly. I looked at him very closely, and he almost joined us at Villa at one stage under Roberto Di Matteo. He is, I think, a great talent, and last season he had a good season. There must be a reason behind the scenes that we're not quite sure about as to why this is happening, because he's not one that I would think that Maresca would leave behind willingly. So we'll have to get more about it, because that is a surprising situation. If it is for him to want to be moved on, then any other club, I would be recommending him highly and think he's one to watch, unless there's a big injury issue that I'm not aware of.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.